This is only the second video on this channel, but I feel...
What?
So yesterday I just finished The Shining. I've seen the film directed by Stanley Kubrick several times. I love that movie. It's at least one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I have very fond memories going through all of those rabbit holes of explanations and theories breaking down the movie. So I wanted to read the book because I've heard things about it forever and I've heard it's much different than the movie, and that was true. It's almost impossible to compare the book to the movie because they're so independent of each other. They follow the same characters, the same basic stories happening. You have a caretaker going to a hotel, and the hotel slowly eats away at his psyche and he goes insane and he kills his family. That is the same for both mediums, book and film, but Stanley Kubrick definitely took it in a much different direction, and he embedded a lot of his own ideas and interpretations into the film, or rather created a foundation for the audience to have more interpretation or more say in how they interpret the story, whereas the book is a bit more clear-cut and straightforward in what it's trying to say, in just the narrative. It's more defined. It's more clearly haunted. There's more definite spiritual ghosts, I guess if you will. When I was watching the movie, I was very hesitant to ever say anything was a ghost or spirit or anything like that, because I found it much more interesting to attribute all of the going-ons to the characters themselves. So if Danny had bruises on his neck, I would say, okay, is there any way that it could be interpreted that Jack or Wendy gave him those wounds? And if Jack escaped the pantry at the end of the film, how could it have been explained without spiritual means? But the book makes it very clear that that's exactly what's happening, and it fleshes out the identity of the hotel much more clearly. In the film, it's very ambiguous what's really going on. You have that last picture, you have Jack as the caretaker in the old-timey photo, that party, which is continually recurring event in the book. And so you question, okay, how long has this been going on? He's always been the caretaker. What does that mean? How is that possible? But you kind of don't go farther than those questions. But in the book, it makes that so much clearer. And so I'm not going to say that this is going to redefine my interpretation of the movie, because I think it's important to still keep them separate, because you had two different geniuses in their own right pursuing a specific art, a specific final vision that they had in mind. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that Stephen King did not really like Kubrick's interpretation of The Shining, his adaptation. And that makes sense because they do take very different directions. They both have incredible strengths that work in film and that work in the book. For example, the hedge animals as kind of a microcosm of this bigger idea that some things only can be described in words and left to the reader's imagination that wouldn't really adapt well to the screen. And the hedge animals are one of those things, but there's so many examples in the book of things that kind of dance on the line between imagination and reality, where you're not sure if this is a real, tangible, physical thing that's chasing you, or that's in the room with you, or somewhere in the darkness hiding, or if it's in the mind, or if it's spiritual, and if it is spiritual, can it hurt you? These kind of ideas. And if you were to convert that to film, it might not work quite as well, which is why I think Stanley Kubrick was very smart to omit some things, but also change some things. Specifically in the ending, it pans out very differently. This was my first Stephen King novel that I've ever read, and I was blown away. It is such a gripping book. I've never had the experience where, when I wasn't reading it, I was thinking about it and I wanted to go pick it back up and keep reading. That's never happened to me with any of these books, where I'm like, I would rather be reading right now than like watching YouTube or a movie or something like that. Like, that's how almost addicting it really was. I read half of it in 2 days. The first half was over a few weeks because I just wasn't as committed to reading it. But then once it picked up, I could not stop. Yeah, so it's an incredible book. Stephen King has just such a free use of creativity, of language, of the English language. His writing style is so unique, but just effortlessly natural. It flows just so gracefully and interjects tactfully where it should, interrupting the flow, whether it's an unwanted thought interjecting a line of thinking. It makes it such an enjoyable read and just so fun. Like, it's so fun. I don't think I've ever had so much fun reading a book before. Yeah, I'm just endlessly impressed with the way he's able to immerse you in the mindset, in the way of thinking of each individual character. And specifically with Jack, he spends a lot of time over the course of the novel just delving into his childhood, his relationship with his parents and his father, all of his unfortunate sins. You can read the subtext between the lines of what he's really masking over with this like affirmation, like, oh, it was for his own good. I don't hate him. There's nothing like that. But then underneath all of that, there was this just festering anger and hatred that the hotel ultimately capitalizes on and twists, and it all culminates in this one laser focus toward Danny, his own son, who he does truly love, but the hotel just uses Jack and completely overtakes him, and he insists that Danny take his medicine. Yeah, there's a lot of striking imagery in the book, which thankfully a lot of it did pass through to the film as well, which I'm glad for, because it's incredible. It is incredible writing, so visual, so immersive, and truly frightening. I wasn't quite sure how a book could be scary. I'd never read any kind of horror book before, anything close to it. But yeah, there were some moments that were definitely spooky. One that sticks out. There's so many images flash into my brain immediately when Danny goes to the playground by himself, and Stephen King is so good at calling back things people said chapters and chapters ago. He'll just call them back in parentheses, in italics, just these interjecting thoughts. And so you feel so completely in the head of the character. And so Danny's going to the playground, and you have the hedge animals as well, which is so, like, I just got chills. My window's open. It could be from that. But you think back to when previously Jack was trimming the hedge animals, and you hear the rustling behind him, and now the lions are in attacking position. And so now Danny's approaching the hedge animals when he was recalling that he wasn't supposed to go to the playground because bad things happened there. And then he goes in the concrete ring, and snow collapses in all around him, and he senses there's like this presence in there with him, some other boy who is trapped. Maybe he died. It doesn't really explain, but there's something in there. It's so well written, and it's scary. It is scary. But again, that's one of those things where you could put that in film, but it works so much better in the book because it's in your own head that you can imagine. And I think there's something very true to the idea that your imagination can create a visual that's far more frightening than anything displayed to you. You create your biggest fears in your own mind. I think Stephen King knows that, and he lends his writing to that very well. This one's like 661 pages. It's a mass market kind of paperback that I got at a thrift store. I'll probably get a different copy. I want a prettier copy, I guess. Truly insane ending. Completely different from the movie. Both are awesome. Oh yeah, as I was sitting, I read this out on my porch, and there was wasps. There's this like idea that goes back to Jack's childhood again, with a wasp nest. And that's kind of the first introduction to danger and pain. This wasp nest that Jack found and put it in Danny's room. I don't know if that was a common thing. I've never heard of that before, but to me it just feels like you're encasing the home of danger into Danny's room. And this is before Jack had really begun his descent into madness. And then during the night, Danny's dreaming, and he wakes up and he's being stung all over by these big wasps. And that's frightening. And so I'm reading this on my porch out there, and there's like wasps making their nest in the rafters. It was very immersive, but I hate wasps. Anyway, there's a lot more I could say, but those are kind of just my initial thoughts, my initial reaction. I highly recommend this book. I highly recommend it. I wouldn't be scared of it. People have a tendency, based on the reputation that it has as this really scary, frightening, blood-chilling book, to think it's this, like, just evil, overly scary, like, it's gonna ruin your life kind of book. But it's really not like that. I think Stephen King's writing is very forgiving. And it really is to the extent of your imagination, but the ideas that he plants in your head are pretty intense, but it's not as bad as I was expecting. At the end of the day, it really is not so intense that it's unapproachable for the normal person. And it's more than just cheap scares. It has to be. Like, emotionally, it's very deep, profound, psychologically nuanced. Just the amount of work that Stephen King does to flesh out his characters is impressive. So that's where I'll leave it. I just figured I'd talk about this for a little while. That's all. I'm rambling. See ya.